I'll get to it when I get to it. Usually, actually, my road trips are when I get to like, I don't know, clean my face a little bit.
What's the Big 12 tournament like?
It's at Globe Life in Texas. I'm not sure how many teams go, to be honest with you, out of the 16 or 15. 15? Actually, it'd be 14. So maybe like 8 out of the 14 make the Big 12 tournament. And we'll go to Arlington and play where the Texas Rangers play. And it's kind of round robin, double elimination style. So
Sweet. That's kind of maybe not the end of the season that's coming on towards the end, because then it's what, College World Series?
yeah, it'd be finish our 56 regular season schedule, 56 game regular season schedule, and then finish from there, go to the conference tournament, assuming we make it. And then if we make a regional, the regionals start after that, and we either host or go somewhere. And then super regionals, which is a best of 3 series, you're down to 16 teams at that point, and then 8 teams go to Omaha.
Is college baseball the sport that goes the longest? It seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our season certainly played the most games, and from start to finish, from February 14th to potentially June 27th, it's the longest time for
sure.
a full baseball season.
So
Everybody's out of school in June for the most part.
just half your years just blurred together.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
What else is like unique about college baseball? Are there any unique traditions or anything like that?
I think there's a lot of schools out there that have their own unique traditions. You know, for us in particular, you know, historically, you could say that ASU baseball has been the most successful. You know, even though the success necessarily hasn't been there in the last decade or so, decade and a half. And it's certainly a different game these days. There's a lot of parity in college baseball these days.
What do you mean parity?
Just schools that, you know, aren't necessarily in states that are, or areas or regions that are known for baseball. You know, places that snow, places that, you know, are cold longer. You know, Arizona's always been a hotbed because you can pretty much play baseball year round. Texas, you know, California, those places tend to have more of a tradition, more of a storied history of having college baseball players. But
like Minnesota, you just played Minnesota last week, right?
Minnesota comes in and those guys can play baseball. Everybody throws hard. Everybody has big, strong kids that can do damage at the plate too if you make the mistakes. And they certainly showed us this last weekend. But there's more parity in that, where those Minnesotas, even Ohio State, they have athletic kids, you know, or Oral Roberts, you know, they're sitting there in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they went to the College World Series 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, so there is a lot more relative parity in college baseball than there used to be. And I think that's growing. And I don't know if that's a byproduct too of the transfer portal. You know, you get kids that come from maybe bigger name schools that didn't play a lot, and they end up at a place like Oral Roberts or Ohio State or some of these other places. They're good players.
Now,
you know?
now kids are bouncing around like crazy.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're replacing 75% of our roster every year now,
Really?
versus before the transfer portal days, it might have been 20%. You know, you're getting 12, 15 new freshmen, maybe a junior college kid here and there. Now we're replacing 30 to 33, 34 baseball players every year for one reason or another. So.
Have you like only worked in baseball as an athletic trainer?
No, my early career, I started off at a high school back in 2008, worked at a pretty good baseball school for a high school here in Scottsdale. Won a state championship in 2010 with that school. Pretty storied high school baseball program at that time. And then went from there to Scottsdale Community College, worked multi-sports there. When I came here, I was baseball only. Now I've taken over men's golf and women's golf on top
That's
of
right,
it.
yeah.
So my role's grown, obviously, just with time, as it should. But now, I mean, essentially the prime purpose of my position is certainly baseball.
But you're a big baseball guy, because I saw what you interned at the Giants.
Yeah, that was 2006. I was an internship with the Giants in the summer, worked with extended spring training in their low A team before they went off they were based in Salem, Oregon at the time. So worked with those guys a little bit, kind of caught the tail end of spring training. So yeah, that was 2006, finished school. I was a student intern at the time, finished school, and then moved back here where I'm from, and then was able to start at that high school which was a big deal at the time. Like just growing up out here, Horizon High School was always a big name.
Yeah.
So they've produced a lot of professional baseball players, a couple first round picks mixed in there. So it kind of was ironically just a good fit, and I kind of fell into it.
Yeah.
So really good 4 years there, but again, that was probably a good crash course in athletic training. I tell my younger students all the time, like high school, you kind of get thrown into everything. In
Right.
high school sports, when you have 700 athletes from anywhere from badminton to football,
Just trial by fire.
it is a lot of trial by fire for sure. So it was a good experience. I believe I didn't get to a place like ASU traditionally where people went to a grad assistant or spent years in pro ball or whatever.
But you were at the Giants kind of before even the high school level.
For sure.
Granted as an intern.
Yeah, granted as an intern. And I was more just another set of hands at that point.
That would have been cool, though, because you're getting your bachelor.
Yeah, I was getting my bachelor's degree at the time. My undergrad was at Sacramento State. And then, at the time, the Giants were pretty good. They had a pretty good roster at the time. Barry was still there.
Okay.
Posey was there. Tim Lincecum was drafted that year I was there. So yeah, I mean, it's always been a good organization, but it was kind of cool. I mean, again, something else I just kind of fell into. I had never had a problem calling and asking a question and networking, and that's worked out to my favor, even to get to here. I never had a problem picking up the phone call to Kenny McCarty, who's our head athletic trainer now. He was here at ASU for 18 years with baseball, and then became our head, and all I did is pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I'd like to see what you do.
Yeah.
Let me hang out a couple times. Actually, my first got to sit and watch a game from the dugout at Packard, our old baseball stadium, against Oral Roberts, ironically. So it's kind of like a flashback when we played them a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Did you guys win?
We did.
There we go.
We gave it one on Friday night, but we ended up winning the series against those guys. But yeah, so there's some, the track has been interesting, but ironically, it seems to have ended up where it's supposed to.
Seems like baseball was a common thread. Like, did you play in high school?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So it had been around the game forever, right? And it's always been a passion. So,
and kind of high school, community college.
Junior college a little bit. Got cut for the junior college team. So I had to find a way to stay around it, I guess is where I ended up.
Yeah, like, so you're just studying kinesiology and you're like, man, this athletic training thing might be more my jam.
To be honest, I mean, I grew up in a small town too, south of Phoenix, a small town called Maricopa. And we had 10 acres off in the desert, and there's a real small community. And, coming from that, we didn't even have an athletic trainer in high school. We had a closet full of tape, and that was about the extent of our athletic training services. So I didn't even know what it was until I got to junior college. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool job. And then you dive into it and see athletic trainers in the big leagues and all over minor league baseball and colleges and whatnot. And I was like, that's a cool enough job where, I don't know, I guess a little nostalgic, but my old man said, if you're going to have to work till you're 75, you might as well do something you like.
Yeah.
So I like what I do still. I'm 40 now and still like it. Still passionate about it. Still wear the wins and losses just like I did when I played in high school.
Part of the team.
Yeah.
Were you ever tempted to be a strength coach?
Was never my cup of tea. Not that I didn't like it. I think I always gravitated more to fixing things versus building things, I guess.
Yeah.
I like fixing problems. So
problem solving.
So problem solving is always, I don't know, I guess drives me more. So even growing up, I think I always thought I was going to be a veterinarian or something.
Right.
But I didn't want to go to school for 10 years. So no, I feel
so you could do a similar thing with baseball.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
golf.
Exactly. So that's kind of where it's taken me. Once I learned what that is and started poking people's brains and kind of seeing what they were doing.
Well, how's the industry like changed? Because I mean, you're talking about like 2008. It's like we're almost at 2028, right? So
big time. Great question. Probably everything that we're going to end up talking about, right? So the industry in 2008 was a lot of sit around and wait for injuries to happen. It was, especially at a high school, like there's no way I could invest time into trying to make volleyball players better and football players better and stay healthy and correct some of their physical deficits that put them at risk for injury, right? So even baseball, in baseball I was doing a little bit at that time, more so with pitchers, just some surface level stuff trying to prevent injuries. But at that time it was you sit in the training room, somebody comes in, hey, I got hurt. And then you go about rehabbing and fixing it.
Right.
as time's gone on, especially in baseball, and especially in baseball, not just at high school or junior college or Division I or professional baseball, if you're not being proactive and trying to prevent injuries, especially in this sport right now, you're missing the boat.
Well, now like kids super young, just like speed, you know, you need to throw this fast to go to this college, and then boom, Tommy
I
Johns.
see it all the time. And Tommy Johns now, I'm getting more Tommy Johns from our recruits that are coming from high schools than we are here. You know, and I think my first year in 2016, our opening day starter blew out his UCL. 2021, we had the first 3 weeks of the season, all three of our starting pitchers coming out of COVID. You know, guys were probably doing a lot of more performance enhancement versus really taking care of the body. You couldn't go anywhere. You know, a lot of places were closed down, so they're all working with some pitching guru on a mound at some park, throwing as hard as they can, trying to gain 3 miles an hour for whenever we open back up again. And we saw a lot of, we had 3 Tommy Johns that year. And since we haven't had any, and prior to that, we really hadn't had any. And you saw it across baseball. You know, there's a lot of Tommy John surgeries going on in that 21, 22 time frame. And everybody, I think ultimately we all ended up pointing to how everybody was training at that time.
How do you if let's say I'm like just a dad and I'm like, well, how do I avoid it, Jesse?
Oh, I do this. I got a 9-year-old playing baseball, right? So I see it all the time, and I get in this conversation with parents who want their kid to be in the biggest club and they want to go to Division I or they want to get drafted out of high school. And I get these questions all the time, and it's honestly the thing I always end up saying first: don't let your kid play baseball year round. It's mileage. It's no different than a car. I kind of tend to find I'm kind of a car guy.
Yeah.
Like, again, fixing things. I work on my own cars. I do that. It's a hobby and a tinker thing. But if I put it in the context of a vehicle, right? Like, one, we're trying to train Ferraris. Like, we want our guys to be as close to a Ferrari as we can.
Right.
Everybody's built different. Everybody has different qualities. But a Ferrari is only good with, they all may have great engines and everything, but their suspension and their brakes got to work well, right? So same thing with a young kid. He's far from a Ferrari, right? He's your average Civic driving down the road at this point. And then there's some that are better than others. But parents that put their kid in year-round baseball at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 years old, I think they're doing a gigantic disservice to those kids. And it's mileage. A car only has so many miles before it breaks. It doesn't matter how well you take care of it. So I see these parents trying to put their kids in year-round baseball, and I think they're setting them up to get broken at some point, no matter what we do. For me, I'm not putting my kid in the club ball scene just yet. He plays 2 seasons, one in the fall, one in the spring. And in the summer, we travel. We get a break from sports a little bit. Doesn't mean we're not out in the backyard being a father and son, playing catch or whatever, but he plays basketball in the winter because he likes basketball. After this, he wants to get into some flag football club thing in the summer.
I guess it's kind of like, because I played baseball, and I remember I pretty much only played in the spring. I was probably behind the curve quite a bit. There'd be kids that'd be like, they do summer, they do fall, they do winter.
Oh, yeah.
And of course they would be better, right? So is it almost like they maybe peak earlier and then experience an injury?
Probably. I think I see that a lot. The talent in the high school ranks, and even what I see in 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds around my son's little league team right now, there's some fine little players out there that know how to play the game at a young age.
Now they have social media and YouTube.
Oh, gosh. And you worry about burnout, right, with a kid, and you worry about defining a young player as only a baseball player. Oh, once you get done with school, we need to go work with this guy, work with that guy, make sure we get this many swings in, and you got this bullpen on Thursday, and you got to be ready for this tournament next Saturday.
It's like as a college athlete.
It's treated that way, and I think we get lost. There's still kids, man. Like, let's not turn baseball into a job. There's a time and a place for it. High school definitely starts to be a job because now you're competing against people to get scholarships, to get NIL money now in this new era, and to find places to play. And certainly here, these guys, this is part of their profession. They're not professional players, they're still amateur players, but how they perform is going to equal a dollar amount at some point.
For sure.
Making that happen at 9 and 10 years old doesn't make sense to me.
No.
So, letting them be kids. And I think multi-sport athletes, even in high school, some of the better baseball players that have gone on and been really successful played multiple sports in high school.
Play football, play soccer,
play basketball, do anything.
Yeah.
Even if it's go be a tennis. I don't care what sport it is. Do something different than baseball. There is some cross training that goes with that. There's some physical, enhancement and skills and capabilities that you learn in other sports that baseball just won't teach you.
100%.
When we're sprinting and running bases, we're always turning left. We're like NASCAR, right? Like
Yeah.
those cars aren't designed to turn right all the time. So
Right.
football is going to make you do that.
Yeah.
So I think there's some of those things that cross over from sport to sport that will make you a better baseball player down the road.
You do like the car references.
I do. I use it.
But
quite
to your
often.
point, if you're trying to be an F1 car, you don't want to beat a ran down F1 car.
Nope.
Got to build up to it.
No, and an F1 car doesn't perform in one sport the way it would another.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, if we're trying to create Ferraris, if Ted, our strength coach, is trying to teach these guys to be bigger, faster, stronger, mobile, dynamic, my job is to help make sure that all those components of how they perform are operating at the highest level of efficiency.
How do you go about that with your players? Like, do you give them specific stuff? Work with Ted? Like, what are some of the common exercises?
It's a lot of things, and I in all candidness, nothing I give these guys is world beating. Like, I'm not coming up with some new band position stretch with their foot above their head and standing on one arm,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of ways to be creative with it, but a lot of the stuff for these guys, it's just generic. When I get this question, if a freshman in high school and his parents are at a camp and they ask me, what do you do? What would you recommend to keep my son healthy? Do a little bit of shoulder mobility work. Get a band and stretch your hamstrings every night. Like, it doesn't have to be world beating, right? Like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's been a lot of good things out there, and fundamental, simple, often is better because kids can relate to that. So corrective exercise programming, when I give a guy a packet, it's probably things that they've all seen if they've ever walked into a performance center or a physical therapy place. It's different soft tissue work, it's different stretching, it's different positional balance and control movement exercises. I have 6 different groups of deficits that I try to test guys into or out of, hopefully. And, I think it's dynamic control, so how we move dynamically in space with balance, with body control.
Is it like Postural stuff?
Postural stuff is in there. A lot of work on a foam pad, maybe even performing like a pitching or a throwing motion off different unstable surfaces, having them feel the ground. That's kind of what that dynamic control group is. Postural restoration is something I actually picked up from the Diamondbacks a while back. They were really big on this postural restoration, basically stacking our blocks in our body in the right way to make sure we're not, 1, at risk for injury, and 2, again, making sure our posture's in a position where we're protecting.
What does that look like? I think everyone needs posture help these days.
That's the main components of that I take away is how our hips sit when we run, walk, move, stand. You want them level and equal. And it's tough postural restoration is interesting because that's teaching a very static and very stable anatomical approach to how we were designed as babies. Baseball ruins all that, right? Like, we swing from one side, we throw from one side, turn left all the time, right? So there's all these imbalances that go into how our body adapts to that, and PRI essentially is trying to correct that. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily, frankly, agree with all of it because we kind of want those adaptations. We know that
I was gonna say
we have to have certain adaptations to perform at a high level, and our body's doing that for us. So I don't want to correct everything, but like the big ones for me are hip positioning and rib positioning, and making sure we're breathing and using our thorax correctly to operate those systems well.
Okay.
So a lot of it's ribs down, not flaring and not having these big broad chests and everything. Making sure
Even
our spine is
benching.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're obviously careful with a lot of that stuff. And then obviously hip positioning, just making sure that their hips are equal in both rotation, flexion, extension, all the planes of movement.
Yeah.
So
for you, it's a very logical thing. You're not out here like Van Gogh creating some random exercise.
No,
you're
not
a
at
problem
all.
solver. It's logical.
Yeah, and I tell even our recruits when they come in and players when they get here, like, for me to throw a blanket over every player, all 40 of them that we have down there right now, and say, if you guys just did this, you're going to be perfectly healthy. I'm missing the boat. And that's the whole idea with, the assessments and the corrective exercises. Find what's tolerable and what's not tolerable. Fix what's not tolerable that we really think that is going to put them in danger of being hurt, and not just say, if everybody just did postural restoration, everybody's going to be healthy. Nope, not true. We found that to be completely inaccurate. Fortunately, not here, but in other places, people that really focused on PRI only and didn't stress the body and didn't allow the adaptations, they still got hurt.
Yeah.
So where's the balance?
Yeah. I mean, everything's a balance.
Right.
So, I mean, one of the reasons we got introduced is because you are somewhat of a thought leader on these kind of screening and assessments to actually like solve some problems. Like, is that pretty common across the baseball world, just college athletics, or are you kind of one of the minority?
I think in professional baseball, it's a big part of it. And every organization has their own philosophy to approach it. You know, some organizations push really hard in the weight room. Others back way off. There's pitchers out there that only do Pilates and never touch weights or whatever. And there's pitchers out there that like to get after it a little bit. When we have the same thing here. We have guys that don't respond well to a lot of physical stress in the weight room. So Ted backs them down. We have guys that really perform well or really need it, especially in some of the younger guys that are barely coming out of puberty, you'd think, when you see them with a shirt off. Like, some of these guys can't grow chest hair. So why are we going to force their bodies to do something they haven't even made the adaptations yet to withstand, right? So it is an individualized approach. Professional baseball has gone significantly to that preventative mindset. How do we put the pieces together, keep this guy available for 162 games? Mm-hmm. Knowing that's not realistic, guys need a break from time to time for one reason or another. So if we can make him healthy for 140 games, and not to pick on the guy, but like, let's talk about Mike Trout, right? Like, I saw a stat the other day, in the last 4 years, the guy's only played equal to like 1.5 seasons. Mm-hmm. Like, that's one of the best players in baseball that the Angels are missing out on. I'm sure they're kicking themselves somehow, trying to figure out a way to keep a guy like that on the field. Yeah, it's no different for us. We missed our starting third baseman all year last year. If we equate DL days to wins and losses, which ultimately, I think all athletic trainers shouldn't necessarily be thinking about, I'm just a medical professional, I'm just here to fix injuries or prevent injuries. It's how do I do my piece of the pie to help us win baseball games? Yeah. So without our third baseman all year last year, him playing, say, 40 of the 56 games, if we can find one or two more wins, next thing you know, we're a playoff team. Yeah. Right? So
otherwise you have a gaping hole on the left side of the field.
Certainly. So, and you miss out on one or two games. We missed the playoffs last year versus he plays in all of them. Maybe we're a playoff team or a host team because he's worth one or two or five more wins along the way.
You really can't just break it all down to Moneyball.
Exactly. So you can go down rabbit holes with thinking of it. But that's philosophically, that's kind of my thought with it. And in college baseball, I think there's some good programs out there that are thinking this way. I don't know how many people are doing. I would say a lower percentage is doing some sort of assessment approach in the training room to identify those physical deficits that get people hurt. Mm-hmm. I'd like to think we're at least in a higher percentile of people that are doing that.
Absolutely. I mean, they're leaving money on the table, right? Or wins on the table at the very least.
At the very least, correct.
Yeah. Well, I guess more kind of stepping away from the number side of things. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of these kids training young because their parents want them to be the next D1 player or MLB player. What about when you have to make roster cuts? Because I know you probably you become very close with these guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, you make these roster cuts, and we do it either in the middle of fall once we've kind of seen where they're at, what our team's going to look like. That's an ever-changing thing too. Next year, the roster limitations are going to be lower. We're not going to be able to keep 40 guys like we did this year. So a lot 35? Of that, right now it's 40. Next year it's going to go down to 34 is what I'm hearing. Okay. So we got to make better decisions on who's going to be available. I do get asked questions from the coaching staff, hey, look at this video, or hey, what do you think about this? Or hey, this guy has this history injury. Is he going to recover? He was really good before the injury. Do you think and there's guys I'm like, it's a tough one to come back from. If you're, this year when we started the fall with 47, you could take a flyer on a guy like that. Mm-hmm. If he does it and performs, he'll stay.
Take a risk.
Doesn't, and take a risk. Next year we're not going to have that. We're going to have to be more diligent on what those decisions are going to be, where you can't take a risk on some of that and risk a roster spot because you don't get it back. Yeah. So unfortunately, it's a situation where we're going to have to make those decisions. I get a little bit involved in that, but again, our coaches are pretty good at knowing some of this too. Coaches are way more educated in my realm than they were 10, 15 years ago, where
Really?
they understand some of the numbers. They understand, what breaks you and what doesn't break you.
I know there's a limit to like what is really shared during recruiting, though.
Yeah, I mean, we do poke that bear a little bit and see if there's a guy coming in that we know if he's not playing for 3 weeks in his high school or whatever, there's something going on.
Right.
So, and we'll end up calling a coach, hey, what's going on here? Or when they come on a recruiting visit, have you ever had any injuries? Yeah, I had this when I was in high school, but I've pitched well since. And it's no different than what scouts are doing when they come meet with our guys. Hey, I saw you miss 3 months at this time. What was it? Or I know you had this back injury. How are you doing now? I know you're playing now. So those get
It's a tough
asked.
thing to navigate.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, there's HIPAA rules involved with that. But in the same breath, organizations, if they don't have it, they're not going to, some aren't willing to take a risk to say, this guy didn't divulge what his injury was. We're going to either slide him down the draft board or not take him at all. There's a lot of other players out there that have been healthy.
Right.
So
there's an element of trust, right? If you're going to
correct.
try and hide something.
And risk assessment ultimately too. So
yeah. What I guess during recruiting, this may be a dumb question, like what all really do you guys look at? Just hitting, pitching, like performance stuff? Like
it's a lot of performance stuff. I mean, our this coaching staff in particular, Willie played Major League Baseball for 13 years. Jeremy Ricardo, our pitching coach, I think he has like 8 years of experience with 10 different organizations. Jason Ellison, our hitting coach, came up with the Giants and Mariners and Reds and played in multiple organizations over the course of his big league career. And then he became a cross-checker for hitters and position players. So he's seen a lot of baseball. So these guys know what they're looking for from a performance standpoint. My thing is when I see a pitcher that's throwing 95 with shitty mechanics, I'm going, guys, be careful. Like this is a red flag to me, and this is why.
So you go all the way to the actual like pitching and hitting mechanics too.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, my eyes, I think I tell these guys all the time, my eyes and my lingo is very biomechanics, physics driven, vectors and accelerators and angular acceleration and all that stuff. They see hand position and they see bat control and body movement and hip rotation, right? So it's putting those languages together. But just when I see angles and vectors watching a guy throw a baseball off the mound, there's certain things that are red flagged in my head for sure. Or if a guy got hurt, like I said, we're getting these high school kids that have had Tommy John and as a junior or a sophomore or a senior in high school, and they come here and I end up fixing them and rehabbing them, which is fine. One of them being our starting left fielder that is knocking on the door as a position player to be a pretty high draft pick this year.
Oh yeah.
But he came in with Tommy John, missed his whole freshman year, and I look back at his video prior to getting hurt. I'm like, well, no kidding, right? Like that was a time bomb.
If you were there, you would have tried doing some of those correctives.
You'd hope, right?
Yeah.
But he's been doing it that way for probably 6 years, and I'm not gonna
habit.
Yeah, I'm not gonna know everybody. I'm not gonna be able to be involved with every recruit we possibly try to bring here.
So what about the, and definitely unValor sanctioned rumor that like Tommy John's actually like improves you as a player?
Yeah, I mean they say that because you get that break from baseball for one, so your body just has a chance to recover and regenerate probably more to its natural like homeostatic state, right? So
yeah.
I think that's foundationally probably a part of it. The other part is guys in Tommy John for an 8 to 14 month rehab, depending on position player or pitcher. You spend a lot of time correcting your body. During throwing programs, you get correction on how to throw a baseball safely.
Mm-hmm.
You also spend a lot of time strengthening your arms, strengthening your body in a way that ends up putting you in a better position once you're done with that rehab. And then you have a fresh new ligament that doesn't have the mileage going back to the car, right?
That's true, yeah.
You have a fresh new ligament that theoretically is going to have all the ability to withstand that tensile force versus the old one that eventually breaks for a reason. So,
man, it's like I'm just thinking in the future, are people just gonna be getting like implants or something?
I mean, there's
Where's
I think
it
there's
stop?
a consummate discussion about synthetic, ligaments and things that can withstand it. But I also agree, one way or another, the body can only withstand so much. So if I put a stronger ligament in there, does that mean I'm ripping bone apart?
Yeah, that's
So
true.
there's a give and take. Right now we got what we got, which is, finding the appropriate graft and the appropriate technique to fix those. And it's been highly successful. Let's call a spade a spade. Most guys return from Tommy John. I think it's a 90 some odd percent rate, or at least 85, depending on the research article,
Wow.
that those guys return. Shoulder injuries, not so much. That's a lower
Rotator cuff.
cuff, labrum, slap tear, biceps, whatever. Those tend to have a lower percentage. One paper may say 30%, another paper may say 60%. Either way, it's a heck of a lot lower than an elbow surgery.
For sure. I guess, yeah, that makes sense. What are some of the other common injuries that you'd only know working in baseball?
My big targets with the assessment process and the corrective exercise programming are the big four for me. So elbow, shoulder, obviously, and then low back, because of all the rotation and all the compressive rotational forces that go into low back, disc injuries, bad hip and lumbosacral type injuries that are involved down there, and then hamstrings. I feel like if I can keep those four out of the clubhouse, we're going to be incredibly healthy. There's always going to be aches and pains. There's always going to be somebody steps on a bag weird. I tell people all the time, I can't control you playing hard and crashing into a fence, a player getting hit by a baseball.
It's chaotic.
Yeah, it can be, right? So I can't control the traumatic injuries that happen from playing the game hard. But if I can stop those kind of chronic overuse, wear and tear type injuries, those four in particular, then we're going to have a pretty healthy clubhouse. And that's kind of rang true. So,
Without a doubt, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned some guys with some serious experience, and then they got you. It's like it's like a little miniature MLB team.
we try. But that's the standard, right? If we're going to get some of the best baseball players in here, we have to have good coaching. We have to have a winning culture. Our strength coach has to know what he's doing at a high level. I have to show that, maybe what we're doing down there is unique than to other programs, and the players that care about that stuff are going to appreciate it. So
I guess what makes, of course they have you, they have some guys, like I said, guys with great experience. What makes ASU, Sun Devil baseball unique?
Depends if you ask the guys that, they'd say the girls probably, but
yeah, we were over there with hockey talking about, sports playing in climates they shouldn't.
It's a big part of it.
We're joking. It's like, well, why are these guys not going to like Minnesota school? It's like, well, you could be down in Tempe,
They wear flip-flops to the rink.
Yeah.
Here, the weather is great, obviously. The heat is always, you can play baseball in heat. It's harder to play it in cold and wet, right? So,
like today.
Yeah, today. You guys come down here. It hadn't rained much in the last 200 days, and you guys come down here and we get rain for the first time. But
beautiful the last few days, so.
It has been great, but rain here is it feels like a vacation day. It's like, oh, a break from the norm, so
yeah.
Nobody gets too worked up about it raining down here. But the weather is obviously great. We can do a lot. We can get our fall ball and a lot of instruction in the fall because we don't have to worry about snow, weather, ice, fields freezing over, whatever is going on out there, where we do it like a 6-week instruction thing in the fall, and then our bulk 6-week scrimmages, team together, whatever, at the back end of the fall.
It's consistent.
Where other schools, in the Midwest or the Northeast, they got to do that scrimmage time early because you're not going to get it. And the rest of the stuff is instruction that's probably being done inside more often than not, depending on the location in the region.
You guys must have like a density of scouts here too.
Oh, it's a hotbed. Look at spring training now. Every GM, assistant GM, cross-checker, area scout, they're all down here. If they're based here, especially. So I don't know how many organizations are based here in Arizona. Call it 15 of the 30, right?
Yeah.
They're all going to be down here. But even beyond that, all those Florida-based teams all have their guys that are on this side of the country that are down here watching us, watching spring training on the pro side. We got the 3 big schools that have baseball here, plus a plethora of junior colleges. So
yeah,
the exposure to scouts and professional baseball is all over the place.
The Giants are like 10 minutes away.
Yeah,
from here.
Exactly. You almost hit a driver to their stadium. So
yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, no, everybody, and depending on who we have or who we're playing, there'll be representation from all 30 organizations sitting in the stands.
I'd have to imagine some of these MLB teams have like reached out to you or vice versa.
There's a handful, not all of them. Got a pretty good relationship with a handful of them that they don't always just want to know about health. And obviously there's not everything that I can divulge to those guys. A lot of them already know Once they either get permission or the player is putting in certain information into their portal and gives me permission, then I can discuss the injury or their medical history in general. But a lot of them want to ask, I get asked a lot, what kind of teammate are they? What kind of person are they in the clubhouse when the coaches aren't around? How do they work with you and your strength coach? Those are the questions I get. They want to know what kind of people they're going to be and what kind of professionals they are on a day in and day out basis. So that exists for sure, especially once it gets closer to draft time. I'll get a handful of calls from different organizations on guys that are in on certain players.
Yeah, you're a straight shooter, obviously, but you also seem very loyal,
I am, but I tell people this too all the time. I have no problem being honest, good or bad, with those people, because every once in a while, and it's happened, where we get a player that really, he's been a good player to everybody who's watching the game, but that person may also be just an extraordinary man in the clubhouse and a good teammate and works his tail off that people don't get to see. So when I tell an organization, hey, this guy checks every box, just trust me, he's got everything you need to go be a professional baseball player on top of whatever you've evaluated him as a player. So I'll be honest about a guy that's like, if he's kind of a turd, I may not bury him. Yeah, but I'm going to be honest there, because we'll get a guy like a Luke Keishel or a Joe Lampe or some of these players that when I got those calls, I'm like, best player you can ask for. He's going to be great for your organization. He's going to be a great teammate. He's coachable. He wants to work hard. He takes care of himself at a high level. They're like, okay, well, he checks all the boxes. And Jesse told me about this other guy, and we drafted, and he was right. This guy's kind of a turd. So
yeah, it helps the organization and guys coming through here.
Yeah, it goes back and forth. And again, I think honesty only helps down the road people that I really want to see. Maybe that conversation helps that guy go from the third to the second round.
Yeah.
And he earned it. I'm not blowing smoke up anybody's rear. It's that guy earned that.
Yeah.
So
do you like being at the NCAA level?
Very much.
Yeah.
Very much. I never, with all due respect to, professional baseball, I did that small stint. This is home to me. For me growing up out here, I was an ASU fan long before I got to put on the colors, right?
Yeah.
So like, I was asked in 2007 as I left undergrad, what's your dream job? Where do you see yourself? I said, man, if I ever got ASU baseball, I think that'd be it. That's kind of like, do you want to go to Major League Baseball or work in the minor leagues? I'm like, yeah, I could do that. But at the time, my girlfriend, now my wife, we're both from here. We want to move back here and again, worked my way up, never knowing if I'd get it. And I got this job way earlier in my career than I thought I would.
Yeah. You can kind of like have a goal and a dream, but you never know when it's
You never know, right? You just keep working and hopefully it works out. And it did. So no, I tell people, this is my last athletic training job, whether it's 5 months or 50 years from now. I don't see myself doing it anywhere else.
Yeah. You're going to stay here, do everything you can to stay here, better yourself, better the organization.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
As for you, like, what's kind of the legacy you want to leave behind here at ASU?
Oh, it's a good question.
You can't be the athletic trainer here forever. You'll hit 200 or something.
Right. I don't know. It's a good question. I think I have a minimum goal is to outlast my predecessor, who's still our head. And I joke with him all the time. I go, Kenny, you were here for 18 years. I'm at least going to be here for 19.
Good record.
Yeah. So I got 8 more to go to tie him. Legacy, I don't know. Whatever ASU decides that legacy is, I guess, for any of us, this is true. I'm not looking to have my name up on boards and signage and whatever, But if the bulk of the players and the coaches that I've worked with have said, man, that guy, I could trust him. He worked his tail off. Players are like, man, you helped me this time. And if I always use a tombstone analogy. And maybe this is a little morbid, but I tell players this too. Good players that have been drafted high and moved on. Like they're not putting ASU baseball athletic trainer on my tombstone, right? Like that's not going to go on there.
Right.
It hopefully is, good friend, good husband, good father, that sort of thing.
You are as a person.
Yeah. And so if players that I've worked with can say good things and say that I worked hard and did them justice while they were here for their time, then I guess that's my legacy.
Yeah.
So same thing with the coaches. We got a great coaching staff right now, and we're all very tight, and we all work hard for each other, and none of us are trying to move up and use this as a stepping stone necessarily. We're invested in what we have going on here with this program. So one day when we're all sitting around 20 years and we're much grayer and my beard's much whiter, and we're sitting around having a whiskey together, we can tell stories about how great that was together, and
what you guys built.
Yeah, what we built. And winning's, I do believe winning's coming, and if we accomplish that and build this from where we started 4 years ago with this current group, and have some success here in this year or the next couple of years, then it's going to be that much more satisfying. I think that's the legacy more than anything.
Love it. What does success this year look like?
We got every opportunity to be as good as anybody in the country. We have plenty of talent. We have all the pieces in place. I think it's just going to come down to how well as a group, all of us, from players to me to Ted to Willie and the coaching staff, how do we all learn to win together? Mm-hmm. And it's a tough thing to do because the culture change. You got to reteach the culture every year in the transfer portal era, right?
Yeah, so now you got a new sort of stone thrown at you guys. It's 70% turnover.
Exactly. So, unfortunately, this year our juniors that are playing have all been here since they were freshmen, and that's a rarity. We're not gonna see that much. I think we have. What we got? Third baseman. First baseman's a senior. Our whole outfield are juniors that have all been here since they were freshmen. So that's a huge start. We've got a couple pitchers around that have been here 3 to 4 years. So there is more carryover in that culture that's happened this year, more so than it has in the last few. The outlook this year, we have plenty of talent. We have plenty of depth at pitching. I mean, we're rolling out guys on Sunday that would have been Friday night starters in years past. Mm-hmm. Instead of trying to figure out how we're going to piece together a pitching staff on a Tuesday midweek game, or a couple weeks ago we went to UCLA, had 2 midweeks. That's a lot of volume of innings that we have to figure out how to fill. But in the past, we're like, God, if we just win Tuesday, who cares about Wednesday? Because we don't know who we're throwing anyway.
Yeah.
Just get Tuesday. Now we're like, we feel pretty good about putting ourselves in a pretty good position both Tuesday and Wednesday on those double midweeks.
Yeah.
Type scenarios. And even if we have to go to certain guys on a Friday night, we feel pretty good about Saturday, where we don't feel like our bullpen's depleted.
Yeah.
If we play a 16-inning ball game, heaven help us, and we have to use a lot of pitching, we still feel like we have a lot of pieces available for the next day and the day after. So
you guys have a deep roster.
I think we're deeper roster this year. This is the deepest roster in my tenure for sure.
That really shows with how long can it be if you guys are in the World Series? Like, how many games is that?
I don't know the exact count. I forget.
50 plus?
Our regular season schedule is 56. Add in conference tournament, which could be anywhere from 2 to 5, I think. Add in, you got to win 3 games in a regional. You got to win 2 games in a super regional out of the 3, so you potentially could play 3 there. And then once you get to Omaha, it's double elimination, 8 teams. So whatever that math equates to, you got to win 6 or 7 games at that point. I'm not sure.
I'm excited. I'm convinced to drive up to Omaha for this year.
I hope so, man. That is the goal. That's the ultimate goal, And quite frankly, when I took this job, I was like, man, I'm going to get to not only go to Omaha. I'd never been to Omaha, right, and watch College World Series. I was like, I'm going to have a legitimate chance of being there and watching a team play in it. Frankly, we haven't been close. So for a lot of different reasons, probably, but that is the goal. We think we have a team this year that is talented enough to do it. It's do we have everything we need to win to a high level to get there? So
as ASU, you said they haven't been at Omaha since you've been here?
Not since I've been here. I think the last trip was 2010.
Okay.
I believe. So
next milestone on your.
That's the next one. That is the next one.
Well, we're excited to watch you play later tonight. So
I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys coming out here. So it's a good team. We should be a fun team to watch. So
for sure.
Pack a sweatshirt and a coat. It's gonna be cold tonight.
So. Without doubt. No, appreciate you coming on, and hope to have you back. We'll certainly be back out here, so maybe we can do this again.
Absolutely. No, for sure. And if there's anything specific too you want me to talk about too with how we're doing the assessments, I'm all game for it.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be good to hear like what's your unfiltered perspective on where Valor's at.
That's
You're the honest guy, right?
exactly. The unfiltered version is it's cut down my ability to do assessments in probably at least half. So 40-man roster, doing the old goniometry ways and trying to get to a point where I can identify those deficits. Um, it takes a while when you got your hands on every guy and you're measuring, assessing, checking position, getting a digital goniometer on there and getting the numbers you're looking for. It worked for a lot of years. It just takes a lot of time. Beyond that, the system that we're working with now with you guys is, one, it's cut that time in half. Two, I can teach a student how to do it, so it doesn't require my hands to spend those hours doing those assessments. And ultimately, I've gotten to the same point, and I think we talked earlier on, I think every clinician has an approach on how they want to do that. And at the end of the day, it's my feel and my eyes that I'm looking for when I did it with digital goniometers with a guy laying on a table.
Right.
I had to train my eyes, certainly, but I'm still getting quantitative data. I just have to have my brain compute what that quantitative data is saying in relation to what I was looking at before.
Right.
And
yeah.
it took essentially that first assessment to get there, because I can look at the iPad and I can look at what Valor's telling me and say, that hip rotation's bad on this side. Well, my eyes are my best tool anyway. When I watch a guy run, hit, swing, throw, whatever it might be, my eyes should tell me that guy's not moving well for a reason. So
that's
when
everything that's your experience.
You're right. But I need a number to show the player, hey, you're only at 50 degrees here. I need you to be closer to 75.
Mm-hmm.
Or your shoulder range of motion is bad in flexion. You're only getting 150 degrees. I need you closer to 175 at minimum. And that's why this isn't doing this, and the shoulder's not operating this way, and this is why you're feeling this way you throw. Ultimately, Valor's telling me that. I can get there. And when we do the assessment, it's giving me a number, and it's identifying based upon the parameters we've set up that this is an outlier from those healthy parameters.
Yeah. Now it's just bridging that gap.
Correct.
Numbers to coaches.
Correct.
Intelligence, we'll call it.
And I can go to our strength coach and say, hey, this guy's missing hip rotation here, poor T-spine rotation, poor stability, poor mechanics in an overhead squat, whatever. I mean, it's essentially all the same stuff I was doing. I'm just attaining the data in a different way.
Yeah.
And again, it's one, it saves me time, which is a big part of it. And two, if I'm getting to the same spot, which is being able to hand a guy a packet with, these are your corrective exercises to attack these deficits we identified. Ultimately, we've done that.
Mm-hmm.
So to that point, my experience so far this year, and again, I remind people all the time, every year I seem to morph how I do that assessment or give a guy a corrective exercise program. It changes every year, right? To stay static.
Getting better, right?
It's got to get better, right? Like to sit here and say, I've figured it all out, this is it. I'm missing the boat. So I'll probably use Valor differently in terms of how we gather the data with 40 players. But and that's just more of a time efficiency thing. But in the meantime, again, I think the assessment itself that we're doing is getting me to the same point.
Yeah. I mean, that's great to hear from our end. I remember we had that phone call back in August or something. Mm-hmm. I know you've seen a lot of stuff come across your desk, so appreciate you giving us the opportunity to try and save you time and whatnot. And we don't want to stop there. I mean, for us, we want to be kind of everyone's third-party sports science platform.
Yep.
Not a lot of people have a sports scientist who's, supposed to be the person that translates the numbers to the coaches. So, I mean, ideally, we can kind of be that for you.
And that's where I see it coming in more and more. Again, coaches, their eyes are going to think differently than physics.
Exactly.
But if I could tell them, hey, this guy's going to break if we don't take the time to fix this now. Give me 2 weeks, give Ted, our strength coach, 2 weeks. Let's see if we can correct this. And again, because we do have professional guys and that have seen some of this stuff at a pretty high level along the way, they know and trust, hey, all right, take 2 weeks, let's see where we get it. If you feel comfortable with it at that point, we'll move forward. So the dialogue is there where, to your point, I could take it and say, this is a big problem. That's a big red X for a reason.
Yeah.
And colors tend to help, right? So
they do, yeah. Induce some fear.
Exactly. So, when I can take that, hey, if you give me 2 weeks, let's not have him do this. Let's mitigate his volume on the mound or mitigate his swings right now. Otherwise, if we don't correct this, his back's going to hurt, or his shoulder's going to get injured, or elbows, whatever it might be. So that's where that stuff becomes beneficial, big time.
And I mean, granted, like you used to play baseball at a high level for a lot of people. I did club rowing at UVA, so got to introduce sports science a little bit. I think a big part is also like how the athletes kind of feel. What's sort of been the reception, Valor, in the eyes of the athletes, and kind of where do we need to get it? You can be honest.
It's very, I don't know, because it's tough. Pitchers nowadays are so much smarter than they used to be because they've seen this. And all pitchers have to do is some defensive work, a lot of throwing, and throw well. But there's so much out there on how to be healthy as a pitcher, whether it's YouTube or the Twitter sphere or whatever it might be, right?
There's a lot out there.
There's a lot out there where guys are always picking up something, and pitchers are always at some performance place. Pitchers tend to be really good. They like those numbers, and they're so number driven anymore. They go out to the mound and they have TrackMan and Rapsodos and Edgetronics and all this Simi or whatever else we've used out there in the pitching lab. So spin rates and velocities and angles of whatever.
They're borderline relying on it.
Exactly, they are, and they speak that language. They're already speaking physics, and they don't even realize it. So. Pitchers are easy to get them to buy in as a point. Position players, especially young position players, they're the big dogs that are used to jumping off, roofs into pools and climbing fences and climbing trees. Exactly, shortstop. And these young guys, they're probably were never broken. The ones that, unfortunately, the best teacher is experience. And so people that have failed and been hurt for one reason or another, then had to go through a process of understanding how to make their body healthy. Those ones are good.
Sobers them up.
It does, very much so. So position players are always a tougher one to get them to buy into the numbers. So like, well, my swing feels good and I don't hurt, so I don't care. Which is why we take our corrective exercise program, and Ted includes it in the stretch every day. And our stretch is probably longer than the average Division I program because we make them touch some degree of corrective exercise every day, knowing that even if it's anecdotally, they're going to get a piece of it and get the benefits from it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. So with the stretch, like, are they pretty bought in when doing those stretches?
Sometimes we need to remind them because they're 18 to 22-year-old jackwagons that need a kick in the rear from time to time. But
talking about some girls they're talking to.
Exactly right. So it's a lot of go through the motions at times, and then Ted gets a vein in his forehead and lets him have it. And
that's where the strength coach comes in.
Exactly. and me too. Him and I are pretty good about being bash brothers when we need to. So
there we go.
They're not afraid to stick my foot into somebody's rear just to let them know, hey, you got to break, dude, and we're going to rely on you. And when you get hurt, you're just letting everybody down.
And maybe it is just like got to come from you and Ted, the AT and strength coach. But I guess as far as like Valor goes, like how could we convince these athletes to pay attention?
I think I think where you're at right now, other than standing up and speaking in front of a team on what your view and perception of what this thing is way different than mine, right? Like I'm ground level. I need quick results. I need efficiency.
Yeah.
And I need quality quantitative data. You're looking at it as how can we help you with your culture and get these guys to buy in immediately. One, I mean, maybe at some point when you guys are out here in the fall, having you speak and understand why we're doing it. Mm-hmm. These kids don't always take things for surface level. Hey, I told you to do this. I have good reasons. Do it. They're like, I haven't seen it. I haven't needed it. Kick rocks.
Yeah.
Right? So some of them, not all of them. And it takes a lot of time to build that trust as to what that assessment means.
Yeah.
But the proof is in the pudding. Guys that test into 3 deficits of mine or less stay healthy. Guys that are in 4 or more almost always get broken.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes they don't learn that until they break.
Well, I know what you mean. Like, again, probably not like, can't equate me to a D1 shortstop here, but like with rowing, they had us do this warm up, and it would be like 10 exercises, simple stuff. I like do squats, do push-ups, but then also like, do stretch out your back. I didn't like, they were saying, we're going to avoid lower back injuries with this. Personally, I hadn't had one. So I was probably one of those guys originally who was just messing around. Like, we're just doing the warm up, and then, the Bash brothers had to come in and really get us to do it. But yeah, no, I wish I had something that convinced me, like, no, you should do this warm up. It's going to make you better. I think that's maybe the main selling point. Like, no, this will make you better.
It's a big part of it. And sometimes I got to change the lingo. Like, if you do this, don't even think about it staying healthy. What if I can make your swing feel easier? What if you don't have to put that effort in to get into your left hip as a right-handed swinger, where you have to drive? And what if I make your braking systems better to create that leverage to hit the ball further with less effort? So sometimes that speaks to them. Oh, you're telling me I can hit the ball further and not have to work as hard?
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's playing with their minds and playing with the language a little bit. For you guys on your end, I think just continue to develop the software and making the system no different than my system, right? Like I told you, I'd change it every year for a reason, trying to make it better. I think you guys have done that to this point. I feel like every update we get, or every time we have a dialogue on what do we miss in this assessment? Where did I instruct bad positioning to get the assessment to collect the appropriate data?
Yeah.
Right? Like that dialogue's been beneficial. In terms of the players, it's, in the essence of understanding your guys' perspective, maybe even there's a 5-minute video, you're going to lose them after that anyway, a 3 to 5 minute video. Hey, look at this. This is what we've seen with you guys. This is what we got going on. And I can just send it in our group text and say, check this out.
Yeah, we'll make a TikTok with someone easy on the eyes to explain it to them. And
they'll probably love the TikTok videos, for sure. So, but something like that, that might be a good idea down the road if you guys dive down that road a little bit, but just throwing it in their face. I feel like if I hit them in the face with a pie over and over again, they're going to realize that there's whipped cream on it, so I guess that's the kind of the idea.
I love it. Well, aside from cars, drinking whiskey, do you play golf, or what are some of your stuff out?
You know what? I have a set of golf clubs. I used to play a lot more. Honestly, because of this job, like I believe in outside avenues. I'm a big hunter and fisher.
Okay.
So like I get an off day where I can actually take off. I jump on the boat and I go disappear at the lake up close to my house, and whether it's with one of the guys or my son or a friend or whatever it might be. I'm big on removing myself more and more. Golf is great. I'm just, because I don't play it much, I'm not great at it.
You'll work with golfers, but
I do. I know the lingo. I know the culture. I could probably pick up a club and occasionally hit it down the fairway firm. But and it's ironic. I just got done putting in a putting green at this dead space on the side of my house, and I was like, what am I gonna do with this just dead dirt there? And I was like, oh, my wife's like, just put in a putting green. You have something to do. I was like, okay. So we made it functional. But I do like golf. But I'm more of disappear in the woods type guy.
Yeah,
get away, flush the baseball stadium. I think it's good for the mind and good for the soul to not always be so defined and entrenched in what we do here.
Yeah.
And sometimes even golf, you can find yourself wrapped up in talking about baseball.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover there.
So for me, I like to go do something completely different. I do like bow hunting. That's probably my favorite. So it's a personal endeavor of mine to get a deer with a bow. I've been close. I haven't done it yet. I've only been doing it for a few years, but it's tough out here with a bow. It's, with all due respect to everybody in the Midwest, it's not sitting in a tree stand in Arizona. You gotta chase them and track them down, and the desert is not a quiet place. So those big years on those animals. Some people are pretty good at it. I've been close and had opportunities, but haven't got it done.
I think people talk how far you were when you got it, but it's also like, what was the landscape,
Yeah, exactly. It's like out here, it's rolling hills, it's sandy washes and gravelly granite desert and a lot of bushy, shrubby, sticky trees. The times I've gotten close, I passed up on one that I probably could have taken, but it was early in the year and it was a real small one. But you get close to them and you're loud. They have big ears for a reason, right? And some of those deer live for a long time because they're really good about being sensitive to that stuff. But it's the challenge in it. I like the challenge.
That's what makes hunting fun, right?
It does. And out here too, some of the places I've hiked to or climbed, mountains I've climbed, you see things that have been very few footprints out there. And that's what I find cool. I keep a picture on my phone to watch that's like the sunrise out there kind of close to the area I live. And it's for me, it's about disappearing sometimes. No cell phone service, the guys are going to survive for a few hours or whatever it might be, and I can be out and get away. Same thing with the boat. I can kind of be out there. And
I'm convinced. I'm from Idaho, so
yeah.
My uncle, great uncle, he hunts and whatnot. I've just never gone, but especially always having my phone running. Being co-founder of Valor, definitely I see
it's
why you want to get away.
It's tough. Sometimes that phone blows up in those times of the year, but I think it's important. When my wife's like, you're gonna go fishing again? We got this and this. I go, listen, I'll be a better husband and father if you let me go fishing for half a day. It's the same thing with these guys. I'm a better athletic trainer when I can flush it for a day.
Yeah.
and then come back with a fresh set of eyes,
Yeah.
a fresh set of approach and eagerness to get through the day.
A lot of people forget that. You gotta sometimes turn the brain off.
It's no different than what we talked about earlier. Like, I'll never define myself as an athletic trainer. These guys shouldn't define themselves as baseball players. I hope you guys never define yourselves as founders of Valor,
Yeah.
right? It's not going on your tombstone anyway. So,
No.
so being able to kind of find that kind of foundational version of yourself, I think is good. It makes you better at what you do.
Wise words to end on.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks for coming on, Jesse.
Absolutely.
And good luck
Enjoyed
tonight.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
So.